Be'ez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Baba Basra daf Kuf Nun Hey, and we will begin from a new sugi over here, uh, about about the seven line, eight, 9 lines from the top of Kuf Nun Hey Amid Aleph by the Itmar. Okay, so let us begin. We are discussing over here the concept of a katan. We're not talking about a kid on the bar mitzvah. We're talking about a young man. Katan means here a young man who does not know how real estate works. Basically, a young man who does not know how real estate works, Chazal invalidated any purchase, any sale that he does, particularly from an inheritance. Let's say he inherited a property and he's like 15 years old and he doesn't know what real estate is all about. If he would try to sell that property, Chazal invalidated that sale because he might be selling it too cheap, and he might be just wants the cash and doesn't realize the value that real estate has, that it can increase over time. It's not the 1, 2, 3 thing. He is considered to be someone unfamiliar with business. So the question that the Gemara is dealing with over here is, when does a person grow up enough that even if he didn't read any books about real estate, we can trust him that if he does sell something, it's a valid sale. And this is only particularly said about, number one, inheritance that he got from his father, because if he somehow bought real estate by himself at 15 and then he can sell it, we're not going to invalidate that sale. We're just particularly talking about, let's say, a 15 or 16-year-old that inherited an apartment building. Does he have the right? When does he have the right to sell it? So the Gemara says like this: Itmar, we learned katan. Again, over here, katan means somebody who's like a young man, certainly over bar mitzvah. When can he sell the possessions of his father? I should add that means real estate. When it comes to movable items, metaltalim, he has a right to sell it. It's just real estate that they were particularly concerned about. So when do we say that even if he has no real estate experience, his sale will be a valid sale? So Rava Amar Rav Nachman, Rava said in the name of Rav Nachman, Ben Shmoine Esrei Shana. He has to be 18 years old. Once you turn 18, even if you have no real estate experience, if you inherited a property, you would be able to sell it. And Chazal would not invalidate the sale. Rav Huna Barachina Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Huna Barachina said in the name of Rav Nachman. So it's a machlokes what exactly Rav Nachman said. Ben Esrim Shana, he has to be 20 years old. So 20 years old, then you can sell the property. The Gemara continues and asks a question. Mosav Rab Zera. Rab Zera asked a question, and this was a story we learned in yesterday's daf. Masa, there was a story in Bnei Brak. Be'echad shemochar nichsei aviv. A kid inherited the possessions of his father, and umeis, and he died. Now, this is not a kid. It probably was a young man. Either he was under 20 or under 18. Okay. And umeis, and he died. And what happened was he sold it. He inherited the property and he right away sold it. And the people who purchased the property took over the property. Uvo b'nei mishpacha. After this young man died, the family said, V'ir aro, they made a lawsuit, Loimer, saying that the sale that this young man did, katan hoy, he was a young man, b'shas misa, when he died, and therefore his sale was invalidated, so the property reverts back to the family. Uvo, they all came, Sha'alu es Rabbi Akiva. They came and asked Rabbi Akiva what to do. Now, nobody knows if he was actually 18 or 20 or whatever it is. And what did they want to do? They wanted to open up the grave to determine if he was indeed over a gadol, if he was indeed somebody who could make a sale. So they asked him a question: Mahu levoitke? Can we open up the grave, see his body, and see what this person is all about? If he's over 18 or 20, Amalehem. So Rabbi Kiva said, "I atem nishom lenavloi." You cannot do such a disgraceful act of opening up a grave. And even if you would open up the grave, furthermore, simonim asuin hishtaneis la'achar misa. There are signs that even if you would determine that he was an adult, that doesn't mean when he actually sold the land, he was an adult. Things can change after a person dies, and he can appear to be an adult or over a certain age after when you start examining the body after death. So it wouldn't be a good idea. So that's the Gemara. That was the story. Now the Gemara says like this: if it makes perfect sense, the story, if you learn that the question was whether he was 18 years old or not. So that was the question. When they open up the grave, we go to Amid Beis. Hainu the Ka'asi Amrele. That's why the people came. The people who purchased the property came and said, "Mahu levaitkai." Can I check the body in the grave? Why? Because if he had simone sa'aras, if he didn't have what we'll see over here is, let's say we open up the grave and we see that he didn't have any hairs. So even if he was 15, 16, he's certainly not a gadol. So therefore the sale would be invalidated. If they find hairs, then you could assume that maybe he turned 18 already. So that would be you can check to see if he had hairs or not had hairs, and therefore you can determine if he's considered a gadol or not. Amrit, but if you want to say Ben Esrim, they were determining whether he was 20 years old or not. Now, what happens if they open up the grave and they find that he doesn't have two hairs? That still would make him an adult. The thing about once a person turns 20 years old, even if he didn't bring any signs of maturity, of puberty, he would still be considered an adult. So no matter what they're going to find, even if they find no hairs, could be that he's still 20 years old and his sale would be validated. That's the difference between somebody, a 20-year-old. A 20-year-old in Chazal's terminology is that even if they didn't bring any simanim, any signs that they have puberty, they're still considered an adult. That's the Gemara's question. Kibat, when they would examine the body, what would they discover? That he doesn't have hairs? He would still be considered an adult. And therefore, he's considered to be an adult, that his sale would be a valid sale. Because Watanan, we learned in the Mishnah, you have one brother that died, and the woman who falls to Yibin falls to a brother that's 20 years old. Now, and the question is that the din is that if he turns out to be a sris is someone who can't have children, right? And somebody who can't have children, and he's not maturing properly. So therefore, there's no chalitza, no yibum. The woman could go free because he can never potentially marry this, do yibum with this lady and have children. The whole point of yibum is to have children. So Ben Esrim Shalehevi Shtei, if a kid who's 20 years old and didn't bring two hairs, Yaviya Raya Shu Ben Esrim, they bring a proof that he was 20 years old. Let's say they bring his birth certificate and show that he's 20 years old, and he still doesn't have any hairs. Saris, and he is the saris that is in the Chumash and the Chazal that said that the woman goes free. Loy chaylitz, there's no mitzvah of chalitza. Loy yabim, there's no mitzvah of yibim. So if so, what would they have gained by opening up the grave and checking to see if there's Cyrus over here? Even if they determine there's no Cyrus over here, the kid's sale would be a good sale. And this was the question of the opinion that said that when can a person, a young man, start selling the real estate that he inherited from his parents is when he turns 20. The whole story would not make sense. And says the Gemara, Lav Itma La Om Rab Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak Amar Rav. On this Mishnah, we learned Rav Yitzchak said in the name of Shmuel bar Yitzchak said in the name of Rav that it's not just a person turning 20, you automatically become an adult. Who shanol deloy boy simone saris. If you have simone saris, it means you have to have other signs that you were a saris. Somehow the hair is a little different on a saris. It's very soft. The urine is doesn't bubble. It's not hot. The voices you can't tell if it's a man or a girl. Or when he takes a bath, the heat doesn't exude from his body. But there are other simonim, and that's what they were checking for. They could have opened up the grave, even if there's no saris. They could have seen that if he had some indication that he was a saris and he's 20 years old, then they would have made sure that his sale would be valid. So what we're saying is like this: the opinion that holds that you have to be 20 years old. Okay, if you have hair, if you have normal adult simonim, signs that you're an adult, fine. As soon as you turn 20, your sale is a valid sale. If you don't have valid signs, I mean, you still have that, you don't have any hairs or anything like that, you're a saris. But in order to be determined that you're valid, to be an adult, it's not when you become 20, you're an adult. It's also that you have simone saris. You have proof that you're a saris. And therefore, then with those two things, they will make you into an adult. And that's what they were checking when they were trying, the people who purchased that property in the story of Rabbi Akiva, they were trying to check to see if the body had any of these signs of a saris. Amarayva, Rabbi said, Dekanami, Diktani, Hu Saris. The Mishnah says that Ben Esrim is not an automatic adult, that which is a saris, that it exempts his wife from chalitz and yibam. Hu Saris. It adds these words, vuhasris. That means it also needs to prove that it's a saris. It has to have other simonim that it is a saris. Shma minos, we see from here that the age itself doesn't determine adulthood, but you need two things. You need that the age plus he has simonim of saris. So now the question is, okay, let me ask you a question. Let's say you have a 25-year-old that doesn't have any simoni saris. Are you going to forever consider him a katan? If you didn't have any simoni saris, till how long would you consider him a young kid? You know, I mean, forever in life we're going to consider him a katan. And it says the Gemara, ad until most of his life passed on. In other words, he reached 36 years, because most people live 70 years, according to the pasuk. So if he's 36 years old and he doesn't have simani saris, so then at that point we'll make him an adult. So he's the latest person that could become an adult. When they would come to Rab Chia and ask, and the kids who didn't have simani saris, let's say you have a 14, 15-year-old that didn't bring any simonim of an adulthood, so he would say like this, he would advise a change in diet so a person could start growing hairs. If the kid was too skinny, Amalu, he would say livery, eat a lot, get fatter, put on some pounds. If the kid was too fat, Amalei lichaish, to lose weight. The Hani Simonim, the two saris, the two hairs of simon of puberty, zimnim the asimachmas khisha. Sometimes you have to lose weight in order to get those hairs of the puberty to start setting in. Zimnim the asimachmas reducing. Sometimes in order for it to set in, you have to be put on some weight. So he wasn't, the hormones kick in or whatever it is. So that's how his advice regarding people who didn't bring simanes naras. So that was just like a little open parentheses, close parentheses. Now we get back to the person of selling real estate. This, again, we said that in order for a person to sell the real estate that he inherited from his father, it was a machlokes whether he has to be 18 years old or 20 years old. Now the question is, what happens? The question was, let's say the opinion that says 18 years old. Let's say he turned 18, he turned 17, and he's in his 18th year. Is it kilifnei zman? Is it like before? Do we consider it too young? Or you have to wait till the 18 years pass? Or you have to wait till the end of the 18th year in order for you to be an adult? In other words, do you at 17 years in one day, is it already the adult, or you have to be past 17 years till the end of the 17th year, start of the 18th year? in order to be considered an adult. So Rava Amar Rav Nachman, Rava said in the name of Rachman, if it's before the time, it's as if you didn't turn 18 yet, it's considered to be before the time. Rava Bar Shalom Amar Rav Nachman, if you're already 17, it's already considered, you turned into an adult and your sale is a valid sale. Says the Gemara, Rava, that Rava said, that if 17 is not enough, you have to be actually 18, lav beferish itma. He never said that explicitly, that toich zman is klifnei zman. 17 is like younger, 17 is not good enough. We learned it from a story about Rava. Dahi toich zman, there was a kid who was exactly, let's say, 17 years old. A story. The Ozel Zabin Nichse, he already sold the property that he inherited from his parents. And they came to Rava to is it a good sale or not a good sale? Amalahu, he said, he accomplished nothing. Why? So the one that saw that Sava Teichsman Kilifne Azman, he saw that Teichsman is Kilifne Azman. If you're 17, it's as if you're before 17, and therefore he invalidated the sale. But that's what they thought, that's the reason why Rava invalidated the sale, because 17 is as if it's too early. That's not the reason why Rava invalidated that person's sale, because Hasam over there, they saw an extra foolishness by him. He was freeing his slaves. In other words, he was showing a total disregard for money. And so he was, even if he would have been 100 years old, he was somebody freeing slaves for just being nice, people who are smart, but stupid when it comes to money. So Rava saw that he was a foolish person when it comes to money, so he invalidated the sale, but not because he was 17 years old. So that's not a proof of Rava's opinion regarding a kid who just turned 17. The Gemara continues and says like this: Shalach le Gidel Bamanashi le Rava. Gidel Bamanashi has sent a message to Rava with a question. Yilamdenu Rabbeinu, teach us, Rabbi. Tinoikis, a young girl, Bas Arba Esrei Shana v'Yom Echad. She's 14 years old. Yidas betiv masumatim. She already knows business. I mean, she's a very successful young lady, and she knows real estate very well. Maho, would you validate her sale? Oh, so here she knows business very well. Shashalach le, Rava answered, responded, in Yadas tiv masumatim, if she knows how to sell assets and knows real estate well, mikha mekar, her purchase is a purchase, and mimkara mimkar, and her sale is a sale. So that was the answer. Says the Gemara, V'lishlech le tinok, why did Rab Gidel Bamanashia ask the question regarding a girl who's 14? Usually girls don't get involved in business. So why didn't he ask the question regarding a boy who's 14? Answers the Gemara, Masha Shahoya Kache. That's the story that happened in Gidel Bamanashi's place, was it was a girl who was selling property she inherited from her parents. So the Gemara asked, why didn't he ask if it was a 12-year-old girl? Because a 12-year-old girl already is considered to be an adult. And if she knows Tiv Masa Matan, why her sale should be valid as well. And so the Gemara Masha Shahoya Kache, that was the story. Story was that there was a Tinokis, 14 years old, who knew how to sell, and that was the question Gidel Menashia asked Rava, and Rava said that as long as somebody, 18 and 20 is not a definitive number. It's only if someone has no real estate experience, so then anything he sold before that time is invalid. But after that time, it's valid even without real estate experience. But if you are experienced, you read, you took courses in real estate, and you know real estate, and you know business, so even if you're younger, as long as you're over bar mitzvah, over bas mitzvah, then your sale is a valid sale. So now we go further. There was a story, we skipped the parentheses. Poches min ben esrim, there was a person that was sold that was younger than 20 years old. The Alzel Zabim Nichse Avua, he sold his father's asset. He was, let's say, 19, okay? And he was young, too young to sell the assets of his father, but Kigidel Bamanasha. But he was somebody that he knew business well. So he knew business well. So, and therefore he sold the property he inherited from his father. Also the Kami the Rava, that came to Rava. He said, Amrle Kroivi, the relative said, now he wanted to get it all back. So he wanted to get it all back. So the relatives tried to convince this kid to act like a dumb kid, and therefore Rava will invalidate the sale. He realized maybe the kid made a mistake, and his relatives tried to advise him that if you want to get Rava to invalidate your sale because you were younger than 20 years old, start showing Rava that you're an immature kid. So zil echel tamre, go eat dates, ushade be kashyase be Rava, and start throwing the pits at Rava. So Rava will think, oh, you're a dumb, immature kid, and therefore he's going to invalidate the sale. Avid hachi. So he followed through and did exactly that. Amalahu. So Rava paskins vina lois vina. The sale was not an invalid sale. The kid is too dumb. Kid is immature. Ki kasvile shtara. When the purchasers were writing back a shtar of the psak of Rava that they have to give back the property. Amalu lakuches, so the people who purchased the property told the kid a way, without the kid realizing, that they told him to say something smart to Rava, which Rava will start scratching his head and say, hey, I thought you were not so smart. And then Rava will reverse his psak, will reverse his decision. Because the purchasers told him, the kid, again, he's like 17 years old. Zil Emile, go tell Rava, and it says like this: why should I have to pay money for your scribe? So much money for your scribe. If I'm asking him to write a Megillas Esther, Zuzah, he would charge me a zuz. Shtara, your small document of psak, which is a few lines. Damar, Zuzah, I have to pay a zuz for that scribe to write it up. So start complaining about Rava's prices in his court, and maybe you'll get off. That's what they advised him. So he came to Rava and told him that, hey, you're charging me too much for the scribe. Amalhu, so Rava realized that the kid is a smart kid. Oh, Zvina, the sale is a valid sale. So the sale is a valid sale. Amru lehe, so the relatives, Amru lehe kroivet, so the relatives came to Rava, but lekuchas agamiru, he's a dumb kid. The kuchas, the people who purchased, taught him what to say to start complaining about your prices. It's not really him; he's really an immature kid. So Rava said, no. Amru lehe mazbele savar. They explained it to him. And Kivan the Masbere lay, since they explained something to him, the Savar, and he can understand it, made the Yada, he really knows what he's doing. So then the question is, why did he act like a throw pits at me? Hi David Hachi. Why did he throw pits at me and do silly things in front of me? Chutz b'yisera hada havabe. He had an extra brazenness. He knew exactly what he was doing. And Rava got the psak right. The kid was a precocious kid. And although he was under 20, his sale should be valid. That was the psak of Rava. Let's just do one more line. A kid who's 15 years old, even though he's not allowed to sell property, but if he testifies that somebody else sold property, if he's a witness on a transaction, not property, he's a witness on a transaction, we'll leave it at that, then his testimony is valid. Alma Mazutra said, his testimony is a valid testimony. You could sign on a document, only with movable items, because movable items he can sell himself. So if he can do this himself, so he can be a witness. But if he's 15 years old, he cannot be a witness on a sale of real estate because he himself cannot sell that kind of real estate, especially if he inherited from his father. So his testimony is a good testimony only when it comes to movable items, since he can do that himself. He can engage in transaction, it will be a valid transaction. But since when it comes to real estate, he cannot engage in a valid transaction, so his testimony would not be a good testimony. Amar Ravashi, the Marzutra, Amalei Ravashi Marzutra, Ravashi said to Marzutra, Maishna mitaltli. What's the reason why movable items he's not a good witness? The Zavine is Vine. You're saying it is a good witness because his transaction is a good transaction. He could sell movable items. El Me'ata Hodetnan, if we learned in the Mishnah, you don't even have to be over bar mitzvah to sell mitaltalim. Here you find something interesting. Hapa'utis, a kid who's 7, 8 years old, his transactions are valid. His purchase is a purchase and a sale is a sale. B'metaltalim, when it comes to movable items. If he buys a Rolex watch, it's a good, and if he sells one, it's a good. And the reason why they allowed a kid who owns a Rolex watch to sell it and under 7, because we need, in case he doesn't have a father, lo yaleinu, he needs to have a way to make money so he can buy food. So therefore, they didn't allow him, of course, to sell real estate until he's 18 or 20. But when it comes to movable items, you don't even have to be bar mitzvah. You can even be 7 years old. So if you're 7 years old, so his transactions are good transactions, would you say hachiname deidus and edus? Would you say that he could be a kid who's 7 years old could be a witness on a document when it comes to the sale of movable items? Answer the Gemara, you amalei. So Marzutra answered Ravashi, it's not just that. You need to have two things. Number one, you need to be that you can be able to do the transaction in order to be a witness. And number two, when it comes to being a witness, you have to be over bar mitzvah. And that's the problem. Hasam over there, you need to be that in order to be a witness, the Torah says that 2 men can stand and be witnesses. But if you're not bar mitzvah, you can't be a witness. But if you're over bar mitzvah but you're under 20 or 18, you can be a witness when it comes to movable items, but not when it comes to real estate. Okay, we'll continue this discussion, Bez Hashem, tomorrow.